Evan Lucas now. He is the Chief Market Strategist at InvestSmart. Evan, good to see you. The markets have been preoccupied with the coronavirus and probably rightly so. Where do you see this going? What are the trends?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, Laura. The market actually over the last 2 days has almost sort of looked through it as if it's going to be sort of contained. It's not going to be sort of on the same level as Sars. Even if you go back and have a look at the markets during the Sars outbreak, basically from the end of 2002 through to March 2003, I think is basically what most people say it. The reaction in the market was almost V-shaped. I actually look at it differently to that. I actually look at it economically rather than necessarily from the markets. And the reason for that is that you and I, we've been sitting here talking for the last 18 months about the whole sort of white knight that has been to the Australian economy, and that's been net exports. And that in itself is the next question, is if the Chinese, who naturally slow down at this time of year anyway with Chinese Lunar New Year, they tend to actually sort of realistically not do a huge amount of work all the way through to about May. If the coronavirus has obviously stopped their economy, they have putting restrictions on transport, movement, etc., all of that therefore comes home to roost with the actual amount of physical take over the next 3 to 5 months. And that will therefore probably mean that the demand for iron ore and copper, the two we've already seen on markets, move lower and quite steeply lower, therefore will start to hit net exports over the next couple of months. It has been, as I said, the reason why GDP has been pretty well maintained. It's not great, but it's certainly not anywhere near the levels we've seen elsewhere in the world. If that was to slow, government spending and the requirement from GDP on the G level, on the government level, would get ever more increased considering the horrible start to this year with bushfires. Consumption is down, private investment is down. So the coronavirus that's the question that I now have is how much of an impact economically it has with the Chinese slowing down the demand for basically infrastructure build.
So I mean, I guess that could dovetail into a point about business owners in Australia, Evan, that if they can't fly to China to conduct their business, then that would have quite a significant flow-on effect, right? They don't want to go, they don't want to get sick. I was interested, there was Alan Joyce's, the chief CEO of Qantas yesterday, saying that after SARS in 2003, it took them 8 months to recover business-wise because it had such a big impact on travel.
Yeah, and look, Qantas is probably one that you probably put in isolation. And the reason I say that, Peter, is if you look at what could happen to Qantas over this period of time, if you saw the kind of slowdowns that we did see through SARS, what Alan Joyce is alluding to, the impact to Qantas's bottom line could be as much as $200 million. So wow. It's a significant impact to their travel. It's why they are, as he said, monitoring the situation, haven't gone down the route that you've seen from someone like Cathay Pacific or what you're hearing out of European airlines.
Well, British Airways is tapped out now, right?
Correct, yes. And so they haven't done that yet. Don't say that it won't happen because, you know, there is every chance that it could. But they are very much under the, you know, they get the impact this has right to them. Getting back to your original question around the impact around, you know, business transactions, it's there. I think the beacon to look at is probably, again, looking at a sort of a granular level. You look at Fortescue, and the reason you look at Fortescue in our world, we refer to Fortescue as China. And the reason for that is that 96% of its exports go to China, and it is a pure play in iron ore. That's all it does, is basically dig iron ore out of the ground. And if you ever want to see it, you know, basically the old adage that we also have, which is if China sneezes, Australia catches a cold. Yep. Fortescue is the beacon of that, and you can see that from terms of what it does. It's fallen 7.5% on the Tuesday reopening. It did get a little bit back yesterday and may a little bit today, but in saying that, it's probably the way to also explain that if iron ore and copper consumption does start to really slow down because of the coronavirus in the very short term, second quarter and third quarter GDP is where you now ask the questions, because it was looking like having quite a boon with the fact that the stimulus coming from the government for the $2 billion package for the bushfires, along with that charity that's also out there as well, was probably going to actually really push through consumption and government spending. Now, unfortunately, we have this other side as well with net exports maybe seeing pressure from overseas.
Yeah. All right. Fortunately, Qantas is in a reasonably good economic shape at the moment to be able to weather that storm of sorts. So should well be able to see them through this. But Evan Lucas, as always, thanks for crunching it all for us and making it all sense as usual.